Okay, so you guys have seen a puppet show of the photon interaction drama. And so you have a background on this. Plus, I know you can't see this perfectly, but remember this game board, we have outer space here, the atmosphere here, and Earth's surface. And so we are going to be investigating how exactly the greenhouse effect operates on our planet to trap heat. So remember I shared with you that we start the game, and by the way, this is obviously round one, we start the game with 12 white beans. You might be like, what were those white beans again? Those are visible light photons, energy packets from the sun that we can see. Now, Mrs. Shields and I are going to take turns. Your job as you listen to this is to tally W's on your dock. Okay, so Mrs. Shields, you go first. She's going to send a visible light photon, anyone she wants, straight down from space, and that visible light photon would be coming from the sun. Now she hits a spot that says heads or tails for reflected or absorbed.
Tails.
She has tails. Tails means she got absorbed. So listen carefully to what absorbed her.
A paved road absorbs your photon and is warmed up a little bit. Put a W on the score sheet for this round. The road emits an infrared photon and it goes upwards into space. Use a red beam for your photon. Move it straight up away from the ground.
Okay, so I forgot to tell you this in the instructions in the beginning. Anytime we have absorption, remember in our drama when the rock molecule, the puppet show, when the rock molecule absorbed, vibrated a little bit, and then heat was given off, what we're showing by switching the beans is warming, heat made. So you should have one W now tallied on your score sheet. Now, what direction did it say to go?
It says use a red beam for your photon, so I've switched out the white beam for the red beam since it's now an infrared photon, and I'm going to move it straight up and away from the ground. And since it is not blocked by anything, it's going to go straight up away into space.
And we would say this, Mrs. Shields' turn is over. Now it's my turn. Same process, visible light from the sun, hitting something on Earth's surface. Now I flip a coin. I have tails, which means I'm absorbed. Some mud absorbed your photon and is warmed up a little bit. Put a W on your score sheet for that round, so you make sure you tally a W. The mud emits an infrared photon, so I'm doing the beam switch at this point. Now it says use your red beam, move it straight up away from the ground, nothing to block it. My turn is over. Mrs. Shields is up.
Same thing. My visible light photon shines down on Earth's surface. And is it going to be reflected or absorbed? Ooh.
We have our first reflected.
Our first reflected. So let's see. Your photon has hit an iceberg. It bounces up into space. Move your photon straight up away from the ground. So it is it's still a visible light photon. And if you think about an iceberg often looks glassy or at least looks white. And if you've ever been outside on a snowy day when the sun is shining, that light bounces off of the snow. So the same basic principle is happening here. I've got a light photon, a visible light photon, and it's bouncing off of Earth's surface and straight up away into space.
So you are not tallying a W there because that visible light was not absorbed to be able to give off any heat. Okay, my turn. Visible light straight to the surface. Sorry about that. I am tails, so I am absorbed again. And it says this, some grass absorbs your photon and is warmed up a little bit. Put a W on your score sheet. You're used to this now, right? When we're absorbed, we switch out for an infrared photon. And here's how it tells me to go. Use your red beam, move it up from the ground, up into the right. So I would go diagonal to the right, but nothing to stop me. My turn is over. Okay, we have 8 more beans to play.
Visible light shines down on the Earth. Okay, it is absorbed. An oil slick absorbs your photon and is warmed up a little bit. Put a W on the score sheet for this round. The oil emits an infrared photon, so I'm going to switch out my white beam for a red one since it's now infrared. It goes upwards into space. Use a red beam for your photon. Move it straight up away from the ground. So instead of going diagonally, I'm going to go straight up. There's nothing to block it, and it will be released into space.
All right, my turn. Let's see if I'm reflected or absorbed. I am absorbed. A stone absorbs your photon and is warmed up a bit. Put a W on your score sheet. Tally that, please. We're going to use a red beam for an infrared photon we feel as heat. Move it up from the ground, up into the right. My turn is over. So we should be what, at 5 W's now?
5 W's. Reflected light. Okay. It is heads, which means that it is reflected. Your photon has hit a stone. It bounces up into space. So sometimes instead of a stone or an object on Earth absorbing light or heat, it actually reflects it back. So I'm going to move my photon away from the ground, up and to the right. So away, up and to the right. And nothing is hitting it. It gets real close, but nothing's hitting it, and it goes away into space.
Okay, so my turn. Okay, heads, I'm reflected. I bounce off something. Your photon has hit someone on the nose. It bounces up into space. Move your photon away from the ground, up and to the right. My turn is over. No warming that time.
Straight down, shining on Earth. Look, it's once again reflected. Your photon has hit the side of a cliff. It bounces to the right where it hits another object. So it bounces to the right, it hits another object. Move one space to the right and toss a coin to see again to see whether you are absorbed or reflected.
So Mrs. Shields is like getting a second turn. It's very exciting.
It is. Pick a new card and follow its instructions. So I've got to flip my coin again. All right, it's tails, which means that it is absorbed. A roof tile absorbs your photon and is warmed up a little bit. Put a W on the score sheet for this round. The tile emits an infrared photon, so I'm going to switch out my red beam for, a white beam for a red beam. It goes upwards into space. Use a red beam for your photon. Move it away from the ground, up and to the right. Up and to the right. Nothing is blocking it, and it will be released into space.
All right, so my turn. Okay, this time I'm absorbed by something. I almost said nose again. A rose absorbs your photon and is warmed up a bit. Put a W on the score sheet for this round. Use an infrared photon to show the heat given off. Use your red beam, move it straight up away from the ground. My turn is over with 1 warming.
Mm-hmm. Light shines down. I have tails, which is absorbed. A dark dress absorbs your photon and is warmed up a little bit. Put a W on the score sheet for this round. The dress emits an infrared photon, so switching out my white beam for a red one. It goes upwards into space. Move it away from the ground, up and to the left. So nothing is blocking it, and away in space it goes.
Okay, and this is our final white beam for this round. So after I'm done with this turn, you're going to tally up, add up all of your W's, and get a total warming for this round. Okay, so I am absorbed. A driver's seat in a car absorbs your photon. Have you ever sat in a car and it's hot? Okay, so absorbs your photon and it's warmed up a bit. Put a W on your score sheet, so another W please. And then I switch to the infrared photon we feel is heat. We're using our red beam. Move it up from the ground, up and to the left. That is the end of round 1.